Bishop Holly of Haiti, and Wendell Phillips. Williams himself was instrumental in leading upwards of 40,000 runaway slaves to freedom by crossing them into Canada between 1829 and 1862. In an interview with Detroit's Tribune in 1877, William detailed events starting in 1829, where he enlisted the assistance of a militant group of men. With the consent of the slave, they would abduct the slave, sell him to another slaveholder, and then re-abduct him, taking him over to the Ohio River to make it into freedom. In the interview, William stated that they traveled at night on peddlers' wagons, that they had as many as 60 wagons with false bottoms that could hide up to 3 men per wagon. Also, runaways were shipped in boxes. However, this method was dangerous and the runaway ran the risk of suffocation, so more effective methods were conceived, as they spoke before the railroad. So they actually did run the railroad. William told the reporters how once the runaways were received, that he would take them into a safe house, bringing them after dark one at a time. The boats for transport were hidden under the docks, and after the slaves were clothed and fed, they would transport them before daybreak across to Canada. One year, he recalled, as many as 16,000 were taken across safely. Finney's Barn in Detroit was often a place that escapees hid. While across the street in his hotel, many of the bounty hunters were lodged, unaware that the slaves that they sought were actually hidden in the barn. Real close proximity, they didn't even know. The routes that Lambert took varied at times. They traveled up the Wabash River to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then up through Washtenaw County. Lambert recalled that girls were often dressed as boys and vice versa to try to keep them hidden because they were actually looking for the other sex. So, in the interview, William stated, and I quote, "It would be a picture if you could only have seen it, never to be forgotten. If you could have witnessed many of the scenes of families reuniting and free men reaching Canada. For any labor or any cost or danger, that was our ample reward," end quote. His recall of the event painted a very descriptive outline of the perils that the runaways and conductors faced. Often he hid people in his own home while he arranged for transport and created diversion for slave catchers and authorities while runaways escaped across the river to Canada. There were stories of liberated slaves who often revealed their location, causing Lambert to have to intervene. One such case even involved the courts and caused a daring rescue and immediate flight to Canada. William was in attendance and kept accurate records for most of the organization's planning meetings. He was president at Chatham, Ontario, meeting with John Brown of Harper's Ferry fame. A member of John Brown's inner circle made mention of this meeting in his diary. He stated that he was introduced to the order in Ohio and that African American Mysteries in Detroit had paid his travel expenses. After the meeting with the men of Mysteries, John Brown postponed his original time frame for the raid on Harper's Ferry. William was a financial backer on the raid, but was not a participant. He felt that his cause of freedom might be better served by the plans of his organization, the African American Mysteries, the Men of Oppression Vigilant Committee, of which he was one of the founders. This organization could be viewed as the forerunner of the NAACP as it came to the defense of many who had legal battles as well. The Men of Oppression was established to be watchful over civil liberties of African Americans and to aid the cause in the abolition of slavery by any means necessary. The overt objective of the committee was to lay a foundation to obtain liberty and the right of all men to enjoy equal protection under the law and the government in the nation where they reside. Their purpose was to achieve this in a calm and peaceful manner and to educate and promote morality. Their code was to adopt morality as their shield of defense, education as their armor, and truth as their weapon to achieve their mission. Further, they were instrumental in setting up and supporting schools taught by people of color, open to school children free of charge. They were responsible for the creation of debate clubs, reading rooms, and assisted in the creation of female organizations whose object was to promote education, morality, and to instruct the next generation. However, the men of impression had an underlying covert objective as well. The organization was used to select and train conductors for the Underground Railroad. There were various levels within this organization, much like a fraternal order. A series of code words and handshakes were used. The fugitives were taught this code as their protection. Here's an example of it. The word they might have used would have been leprous. The password, crossover, but it's spoken this way. The question would have been cross, their answer, over. Then they were asked a series of questions. Have you ever been on the railroad? They would answer, I have been a short distance. Where did you start? The depot. Where did you stop? At a place called Safety. Have you a brother there? I think I know him. The answer would be, I know you. You've traveled on the road. The last test the station manager would do, he would pull out the knuckle of his right forefinger over the knuckle of the same finger on the left hand. The answer would be to reverse the process. The men of oppression also funded and trained undercover operatives in preparation for the Civil War that was on the horizon. They secured financial backers, enlisted and trained men who were still in captivity to spy on the Confederacy. This proved to be a very decisive move that assisted in the outcome of the Union Army's ultimate victory. So, it is apparent that the contributions of my ancestor, William Lambert, were very substantial. William Lambert's contribution to the Underground Railroad and his covert activities surrounding the Civil War have made this remarkable man a legend in his own time. It has been said that he was the Martin Luther King of his day. A legend whose legacy is in the forefront of Michigan history, but alas, his story has not been given the prominence on the national arena. It is my personal conviction, however, to spread the William Lambert story and Detroit's considerable contribution to the Underground Railroad and its strategic role of the men of oppression played in gathering the intel for the Union Army. The earthly remains of my ancestor William Lambert are buried at Detroit Elmwood Cemetery, but the spirit of his legacy lives on in his descendants, in the push for civil rights and equality, in the push for better education opportunities, in the push for non-violent conflict resolution. William was truly an ordinary man who accomplished extraordinary. Because they did some work with him and actually helped him along the way when he went to Ohio and et cetera, as I spoke earlier. So they had some influence on that.
At that meeting, if I can interject, at that meeting, George the Baptist tried to change the plan.
Yeah, they didn't want to. Yeah.
Rather than having this raid that slaves hopefully would flock to and participate in and become a revolution, he wanted a coordinated set of explosions under white churches on a Sunday morning across the South where slave owners would be blown up.
I was just going to add that at that meeting, the majority of those in attendance did not agree with the Brown's plans. However, they did support financially the endeavor that we were trying to have happen.
Two questions about fugitive slave law. First of all, how is it enforced? Was it through marshals? And then secondly, it sounds like toward the end it wasn't terribly effective, at least in Michigan.
Well, it put the federal government, I'd like to describe it, it put the federal government in the business of capturing and returning slaves. Federal marshals were put in the service of of, when a slave owner or, other claimant, like a slave catcher, came forward looking for a slave in a particular area, they would not only swear out a warrant for this person's arrest, but they would assist in the arrest. And then in each district across the north, there were typically the local justices of the peace or judges or whatever who were hired by the federal government on a case-by-case basis as commissioners, not our kind of commissioners. Commissioners declared them free, but there was no proof other than the claimant's affidavit that you had to allow. So the deck was stacked against both runaway slaves and 3 blacks accused of being runaway slaves. The situation, though, is there was a lot of local pressure. And in some communities across the United States, it was hard to hire a commissioner because, one, it's hard to find somebody who was willing to return, order a fugitive slave return. Secondly,
If it was, they're probably now, they never mentioned Now,